Hello, everybody. Here's another unscripted intro. So I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is we've got a Dancester episode that we recorded. It's 3 hours long, and it features Yo It's Crow from the Twitter Yo It's Crow, as well as Sakon and some other projects. The bad news is it was obliterated because the audio fucked up. So instead, you're going to get this normal episode. Now, on the bright side, for those of you listening in the future, the Crow episode will probably already exist. So whatever. Anyway, in this episode, we talk about acts, sort of mid-Act 6. We say it's acts... fuck, I hate talking about these. Act 6, Act 3 through Act 6, Act 5, I believe. But we don't get all the way. Primarily, we talk about the Alpha Kids on their planets, as well as the meteor shenanigans that go on. So, for example, the classic Dave Cat penis Ouija, where they're trying to vie for time with Terezi, Rose's alcoholism, Gamzee's mysterious goings-on, and then on the Alpha timeline, nothing really happens. You know, they go Trickster mode, they go God tier, Roxy falls off the wagon, all that kind of shit. And then finally, we talk about the Cherubs. Now, of course, Caliborn and Calliope are embroiled in this predomination battle because they're Cherubs. I'm not going to explain Cherubs right now because I'm fucking tired. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, Caliborn kills Calliope. He has to witness the tragic death of his sister. I'm sure that we can all have a moment of silence for him somewhere in the episode. Anyway, yeah, once again, sorry for the unscripted intros. I'm really busy these past few weeks. But people seem to think they were funny, so I'm doing another one. So... bada bing, bada boom. Sorry, I turned into a New York guy for like 2 seconds there. Anyway, here's the episode. Hello, everybody. My name is Funk McLovin. You know the drill. We're here with another, I almost said video game about, Homestuck. It's a podcast, unfortunately. Podcasting, in my opinion, is sort of the lowest common denominator of media, because it's usually not in like a derivative way, but it is media discussing media in a long form way. So we're boiling it down to its barest essentials and delivering the product to you, the listener. I would like to, before we begin, give a shout out to the YouTube user Jazzy Waffles, who has commented on a few of our videos on YouTube, and I have been using Jazzy Waffles' own summary videos of Homestuck to write the synopsises of... Is that a word? Synopses?
Yes,
synopses? Whatever. I've been using those to base our episodes around, the structure. So thank you very much. One of Jazzy Waffles' comments was that they were not happy with the quality of those videos. I can't speak to that. I think they're very good. Myself, very good recap of Homestuck if you've already read it in a concise format. So check them out if you can. I think they have other videos about like My Little Pony and such, so that'd be cool. I think that there would be overlap between our listeners and that. So yeah, Jazzy Waffles. But yeah, other than that, Act 6. We're talking about Act 6.3 to 6.5. We discussed a little bit of 6.3 in the last video, but we're going to finish it off here. Last time we talked about the Alpha Kids, their personalities, how they interact with each other. We had some ideas about Lil Hal. And this one is about them getting into their land. They're doing their quest. We also have some of the meteor stuff, dream bubbles, that kind of thing. Do you guys have any broad thoughts before we begin? We'll start with Bucky.
So, this is the bit where, like, I don't know, I think we had we'd had at least a couple of long hiatuses now by this point, and then we got the Alpha Kids are starting to get on their planets. We've got that, like, Mist parody walk-around flash for Jane that was actually kind of a fun puzzle. For me, that was was like an introduction to the Mist format, and I haven't played any of the entries in the Mist game, so, like, at the time I read it for the first time, I thought it was cool. It was interesting to play through the second time when I was, or like the second big time when I was older. But now I wonder, now that like I've seen the way that Hiveswap handled Ace Attorney, I wonder how much better the actual Myst games are.
They are considerably better.
That was a very complicated burn, but that was good.
I was trying to not make it a burn, but the thing about it is that it did turn out to be a burn.
Yes.
I shouldn't have tried to make it not one, because it just was one the whole time.
That's okay.
I don't know.
What is this podcast but a giant burn?
That's true.
On Homestuck?
It's a giant burn and also, like, aloe, hopefully.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, you're good. So the thing is we got that one interesting walk around, and then same as with the beta kids, we kind of just got a whole load of nothing regarding, like, seeing what the quests and layout of the other planets were. We saw a bit of Jake's, we saw a bit of Dirk's, we saw almost nothing of Roxy's. Seems like that was kind of par for the course for Lalonde's lands getting, like, left out.
Shafted. The Lalonde curse. You hit on something that I think is an overarching theme of Homestuck, which is, oh, this is cool, and then it gets dropped.
Yeah,
that's not good.
It's really not good.
Yes. Did you have anything else to add? By all memes.
I mean, that's overarching stuff. I mean, this is... I love the characters from Act 6, but the way that Act 6 goes is not great. I think we're definitely going to dig into more of the, like, specifics of why this halting narrative sort of, like... I know that at least part of this is because of my experience with, like, the hiatuses, but the way that we sort of, like, shunt back and forth between, like, intermissions and parts of the story and, like, things that maybe didn't need to be intermissions, but we've committed to, like... I get that it's, like, a funny meme haha joke that, like, oh, well, there were 5 acts and then a 6th act, and the 6th act will have 5 sub-acts plus a 6th sub-act plus a 7th sub-act, and then we'll get on to the actual 7th act. Is like, God, in theory, that was hilarious. In practice, writing that out just became tedious. I think that if you still wanted to do that, there's a way to set that up so it doesn't feel tedious to get through, but, like, as Homestuck currently stands, my experience reading it through the first time was that of a train sort of stopping and starting repeatedly. It goes quicker when you're an archival reader, but I still think the impression of, like, sliding back and forth between, like, 2 sides of, like, a bench seat in a car with no seatbelt. You're like, oh my god, why are we going back and forth like this? Like, that's just kind of that's the biggest... The degree to which we're whipping around all of the plot threads that we've brought up, trying to, like, whip up into a frenzy of, like, narrative conclusion. Because the thing is that in Homestuck as it stands, we do a bunch of that, and then we get to the fucking game over flash, and then we go back, and then we do a bunch of it again, and it does feel very tedious, and, like, even with the point of it being the theme of having to start over again, which I do like, there has to be a way to execute it better than what we got. I think that's my overarching thoughts.
Yeah, I think that encapsulates the experience of reading before the game over, is this very jerky, like, nothing is really happening, and yet we are also spread so fucking thin over, like, it's like more than 3 groups of characters. It's the 2 main ones, the Meteor and the Alpha Kids, but it's also the ship crew. It's also like Jack Noir, and they overlap, and there's all this fucking mess, and the new Alpha Kids, and it's just like this very
Cherubs and the Cherubs, and
oh god,
like,
yeah.
then Gamzee with Caliborn, and then dead Calliope off doing her own shit, and then we've got another Calliope after that to keep track of.
Oh god,
yeah,
I'm spiraling.
There's
spiraling in the drain.
It's not having a large cast can be good, but like we didn't. This is the benefit of looking at it as a complete work versus reading it as a serial work. Is when you were reading it as a serial work, you were like, oh yeah, time to catch up with this character again, even if it's just for a couple of pages. But then when it's an archival work, you're like, why are we flipping back and forth so rapidly between these characters? It doesn't make any sense that I'm gonna have like a 2-page conversation with these people and then flip over to something else.
I'm glad you brought that up, Buggy. You are kind of the expert of putting this in the context of when this was written in actual, like, real human meat time. I didn't expect to say meat time, but I did.
You did say that.
And now I have to live with that forever.
Meat
anyway.
Time for meat.
Oh, that's gonna be on it. We're gonna put some merchandise out.
Yeah,
it's gonna say
time
meat time
for meat.
Anyway, yeah, I think you're very good at putting that in context of this looks a certain way to archival readers, but it looked a different certain way back then, and here's how it all kind of ties together. I like that because this is actually where I started reading the updates in this sort of mid-Act 6 area when I started actually getting back into MS Paint Adventure stuff. And so that is even more potent now. Janaya, you as an archival reader, what are your overarching thoughts about this part?
So this is, and we've kind of started this already, like Act 6 I think is the area where we're doing the most like thorough rewriting of the plot itself, as opposed to like retooling things or tweaking characterization or adding like subtext that wasn't there originally. So I read this all I read the entirety of Homestuck as an archival reader, and although I didn't get exactly the same vibe of like a train stopping and starting, it is still a very all over the place experience. It becomes, and I liked Act 6 because I liked the characters and I liked the character dynamics, but it becomes very confusing with all of these different characters. When you're reading it as an archival reader, you kind of like don't get as much time to sit on what's happening and reflect on it, so you kind of get this very like, what the fuck, like whirlwind of bullshit experience. And
there you go. That's another t-shirt. Whirlwind of bullshit.
It's very all over the place. It feels very unfocused as an archival reader, and like there's a lot of things that are definitely extremely interesting, and you want to know about them, but then it's like, oh, it's going to move to something else, and it makes it hard to follow it. I think that we're probably going to end up consolidating some of those. I know we're going to end up rewriting a lot, and then it gets into some stuff that I just straight up don't like, with some of the stuff with the intermission and like Terezi and Gamzee and how Rose's alcoholism is handled, and like there's a bunch of stuff that's just bad, and I think needs to be like changed around to deal with the same themes, but to deal with them in a more like sensitive and compassionate way. So like there's a combination of things, and yeah, it's a lot going on. Like you're functionally introducing a number of characters, because you're like starting to actually get to know the Alpha Kids in a more meaningful way. You're introducing some of the Dancestors for the first time. You're really meaningfully introducing Calliope and Caliborn and all of their stuff, and like you've got all of this shit going on, and it's like it becomes just a mass of absolute nonsense. And I think that you can take that and focus it, but like it's gonna take some work.
I agree. You both said this, but it's extracting the themes. Bucky, you said you liked the theme of starting over. I like that too. Janaya, you said it's important to extract the themes and sort of make them more cogent. I think Andrew Hussey, I've said this before on this pod, but Andrew Hussey's very good at like overarching stuff. But then when it comes to writing the details, the panels, the actual interactions, some of it falls flat. And that is not good, but now we can fix it, treating the first one like a first draft. Let's get into some of the specifics that happen in this part, which I will call the lead up to the retcon. Because basically this part that we're talking about starts with the Alpha Kids getting into the game, and it ends with John touching the magic house juju. And then that becomes the retcon thing.
Right, so where did we end up last time? So we said that Jake is a Chad, Jane has mommy issues, canonically, Roxy's a transgender gamer girl, and Dirk is a trans manlet. I think that's where we ended up with the situation. Dirk Strider deserves to exist somewhere in the realm of five Umbrella Academy and Artemis Fowl. Like, manlet child genius. Perfect archetype. Already love that. Robin from Young Justice in the first season. Most iterations of Robin, to be quite honest. Just that general, like... I think Dirk deserves to be that. Like, the emotionless stoicism is also good. Like, I kind of like that he's, like, that sort of, like... He's going to be 18 now, so I sort of like that he's going to be in that archetype, but, like, sort of going through a stoicism phase, which is just great. Philosophy student. Robin to philosophy student pipeline.
Are we doing 18, or are we keeping the age differential the same, so they're, like, early 20s?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
We did say that last time, didn't we?
Shit.
Yeah, we did.
Okay,
yes.
yes.
There was something I wanted to mention also.
Yes.
That we didn't get to last time. We are making them 21, which is fine.
Yes.
They are now, like, post... They are collegiate age, as opposed to the original ones. However, I think it would also be a good idea to have them exist in a more contemporary moment.
I feel like we discussed that last time.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, like, I think...
Like, they would exist in 2021. Or not Roxy and Dirk, but the other two.
I think we talked about, like, Jane and Jake existing in a contemporary moment, and then Roxy and Dirk are in the future, because that's kind of fundamental to their whole thing.
Yes.
But yeah, like,
they
we
are
did
still
talk about,
in
like,
the future.
Yeah, where like Jane in particular, like I think we did the most rewriting with Jane. Like, she is the realized version of her character in this, as opposed to, you know, Girl John, which is basically what she was in the original. So
yeah, most of what I'm attached to about Jane, I am quite willing to admit is, like, heavily reading into the bare bones of what is in the comic, which is like Alpha Kids appreciators, handshake Dancestors appreciators, really.
Yeah. Handshake everyone that likes Hive Swap.
Lol. I think a good place to start off then, with those readings in mind of these characters, is the Alpha Kids game session before the Beta Kids come and, you know, put them in there. So the process of entering the game for the Alpha Kids is very interesting. It is mostly masterminded by Dirk, and one of the most interesting things, I think, is the sense that the Alpha Kids are, in spite of being older and theoretically more competent and wise, they're not. They kind of suck. And because of that, Dirk needs to basically enter their games for them, which feeds into, like Bucky said, that sort of manlet genius, yet still, like, a beleaguered man thing, where he's, like, got the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he's also, like, this cool stoic guy who tries to be in control of everything.
He's such a dipshit. He is just, I cannot emphasize how much of a, like, That's the thing about the genius manlet character, which also Five Umbrella Academy isn't even a genius manlet. He's a 60-year-old man in a 12-year-old's body.
Yeah, exactly.
But same shit. It's exactly that. He's missed out on some fundamental maturity thing, but he's traded that for intelligence. I think that's a perk you can take in Fallout New Vegas. I'm fairly sure.
He's taken a hit to wisdom in exchange for intelligence, basically.
Yeah.
He uses intelligence as his dump stat.
There you go. Yes. I like that. I like that analogy. The other thing about the Alpha Kids session are two things that also make it fucked up in a way, which is they don't prototype their kernels, so they get a void session, which means it's empty. We'll talk about the death stuff, the sort of death allegory later. But also, they all lose their extra lives getting into the game, in spite of all of them awakening much earlier than the beta kids. I guess, broadly, what do you guys make of the kids as they enter their session? And this time we'll start with, I almost called you Kanaya, but we'll start with Janaya.
We've gotten a mixing, almost calling me Kanaya and calling Kanaya Janaya now, so that's very funny.
You have picked an unfortunate name for this podcast.
I did that on purpose.
But I cannot say it's a bad name in general.
Thank you. So I don't really have a problem with the way that they enter their session, or the fact that they lose their lives, or any of that. The whole this is one of the parts where the theming kind of hits, with the death theming planets and the death themed planets and everything. And the kind of it's I think you're getting into a part of the comic where you're gonna start emphasizing a growing hopelessness. And this is, I think, something that you want to lean into if you're going to make Game Over feel meaningful, which is that you've got this mounting sense that something is intricate, integrally wrong with what's happening. You can't win the session, and everything is kind of piling up to that. So you have all of the bad shit that happens with the Alpha Kids. You have all of the stuff with Caliborn that kind of leads into that. You have all of the these very powerful bad guys that are becoming more powerful. You have Lord English coming. You have all of the stuff with the intermission stuff, which is kind of you've got some negative shit going on there, and I think that should continue to be somewhat that way. And then you've kind of got Grimbark and Crocketeer and everything, where things get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and then you're given this way out, which in our case is involving subverting the concept of the narrative predestination. But I think that this kind of the way that the Alpha Kids are not great at their game is part of that sort of leading into that theming, where they have a bunch of shit happen to them, and they pay a very heavy price to get into the game, and everything they do is bought at great cost to themselves and their relationships with each other. And I think that actually is pretty powerful theming, because you're starting to get into the part where this is the dark part of the story, where things are going badly and you don't know of a way out yet. And I think that kind of starts to lead into that theming.
I think that the death thing is very interesting, because what is never addressed in Homestuck is the Alpha Kids session is supposed to be a void session. That is why they are able to put in the Beta Kids session and make a complete game. But what goes undiscussed is the void session is still a failure, The Alpha Kids on their own cannot complete the game, which is very different to the Beta Kids, who basically, due to Bec Noir only, their game, what I'm saying, is unwinnable on a technicality, whereas the Alpha Kids game is unwinnable by design. Which is
The beta
Yeah.
kid session had way too short of a time limit by virtue of by prototyping the Green Sun or the first Guardian. Uh, it was because of Bec Noir, yeah, but specifically it was because one of the kids had a first Guardian as a Guardian that got prototyped because they were dead. That actually goes back to Beck. Uh, but yeah, you're right. I just wanted to say it was because
It's
of
an
the time
oopsie.
limit. Yeah, it was a glitch.
Yes, it is it is a glitch. It's an oopsie. It's a oh darn. We would have had a successful session if not for this one thing. Whereas the alpha kids are like, no, we need outside intervention. This is totally fucked.
If you really want to play with the software analogy, the alpha is the prototype is unusable. Like, it has the basis of a game, but it's not winnable or completable. The beta has a bug that needs to be fixed in it, but is otherwise playable and complete. Like, if you want to go with that whole thing, which, I mean, that part was intentional. Andrew Hussey had experience with software development, nominally.
One of the things, I think my only criticism of the Alpha Kids actual session is that they are on the rocks for like all of it. I think that at the very least you could have some kind of goal that they're working towards, to give them fucking anything to do while they're waiting. Because literally in the comic right now, all they do is wait. Like, they get into the game, it is very exciting, and then fucking nothing. And that is intentional, in my opinion, because it is a void session. However, they still have to. They should still have to prepare in some way, in my opinion.
Yeah, here's a thought. I don't remember off the top of my head. Do they have the ability to communicate with the beta kids before meeting them, or was that not a thing?
Only through the
No.
dream bubbles.
Jake wrote letters to Jade that I don't remember how they got there, but it was like definitely like a plot hole thing. Oh no, Terry Kissinger. They were sending them through some sort of warp thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was Roxy also had. Roxy and Jake both have a warp between the alpha and beta sessions that takes like a lot of power to use. That it is explained poorly in the comic, but they have like a way to do that.
One of the things I was going to suggest is to give them some way that's more usable to communicate. Again, I sort of brought this up with the ship and the meteor, where they have the ability to communicate, but like not necessarily in real time. So either dream bubbles or some like asynchronous method of communication, a la writing letters to each other, to allow them to talk to the beta kids, because like you've got this kind of like blank space, and actually there's some conversations I think like would be really cool to have. There's one in particular, and if we go in this direction, I'll talk about it more when we get to the intermission part. With Roxy and Rose talking to each other, like there's some stuff I think would be really, really potentially powerful to have them like actually talk. I don't know how much we want to do with that, but like I can see how it could be used to fill some of that space, and also to deal with some of the stuff from the intermission.
Yeah. There's not really much to say about the Alpha Kids session because it's just kind of fucking empty. Giving them something to do, whether it be talking to the Alpha Kids or some goal, like maybe they have to more actively blow up the battlefield in Skya or something. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they are trying to plot to get kill Condi because they know she took over Durst, something like that. I don't really know.
Or maybe the method they have to use to talk to the beta kids is something they have to work towards.
Yeah, they have to like set it up, or
where the payoff is the ability to.
It would be funny if like you know how Dave like sends messages one after the other. It could be like every one of the messages that the beta kid sends, like one sends, they get them like once a week. And so Dirk is reading Dave's letter, and it's like coming to him one line every week, and it's just the most inane shit.
Oh my god.
That'd be kind of funny.
That would be funny.
So one of the pieces of symbolism with the Alpha Kids was that they're called nobles, and their planets are noble gases, and noble gases are inert. They don't interact with other gases. They don't have the molecule space to do so. All their electrons are full up. If I am remembering my chemistry correctly, I'm probably not. Don't tell me if I'm not. I don't care.
No, that's correct.
That's an appropriate literary understanding.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying you are correct actually about that.
Okay, cool. But I thought that what that sort of ended up turning out as was that they were fucking incapable of communicating with each other. I think that's actually pretty good. I did like that they kind of were farting around doing nothing because they couldn't communicate with each other, and they were just wholly incapable of getting anything done because it turned out that, like, they didn't have the fucking social skills to figure it out, and, like, they sort of could have if they had had, like, some sort of incentive or, like, outside influence, but for the longest time they didn't. I did like that. I'm not saying that we can't do something more with them, but, like,
yes,
it kind of works
in the
that,
midst
like,
of any goal. Sorry, go on.
It kind of works that they need an outside influence, and also, like, some of the best parts of Act 6 were the flashes, and some of those flashes don't do very much other than show visuals. Like, they're very cool, but they're also very, like, anime intro.
Yes, I think that's critical. Anything we choose to have them do, like any goal, I think should have, they should still be clearly, like, incapable of fucking speaking to each other. In the rewrite especially, I lean into how good friends the beta kids are, and subverting that with the alpha kids is a very important part of their story, and I like that. Something we haven't talked about in their session is some specific things. We've talked about Condi, and we'll talk about her more later. She takes over the Durst. But what's more interesting is Gamzee is there. And what do we make of that? I don't really know. We've changed Gamzee a lot. How does that affect him being in their session?
I mean, we don't actually. But the biggest thing with Gamzee again was the framing. Like, the Gamzee can still be there as long as he isn't a fucking joke and he isn't sexually harassing people. Personally, I think that, like, having Gamzee sort of being around and being sort of threatening and looming, but it's more because he just doesn't want to talk to anybody here because they're like, hey, none of this matters, none of you are, like, real people, and I'm sort of trapped being aware that I'm a fictional character in a story helping the villain along, and that's just kind of my purpose, and and I know that I'm inevitably going to have to go, like, raise these cherubs, and I'm sort of, like, basically, if they're aware of their position and are intimidating because they are, like, aware and, like, sad, rather than them being intimidating because they're aware and, ooh, crazy, then, like, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Since we've done away with
I had an idea.
Irania mind controlling them.
This has a lot of ripples that I haven't considered yet, but instead of Gamzee just kind of appearing there and having it explained later, but poorly, it could be like, on the Meteor, everyone gets together and is like, all right, we have one portal that will send someone to the new session. We need someone to go there and explain to them what needs to happen. And due to some reason, whether it be Gamzee's, whether it be, like, played for a joke, or if it's Gamzee knows he has to go there, he could, while no one's looking, go to the alpha session and start doing things on Lord English's behalf. Because I think we like you said, we're still going to have him do that, but he is going to be more aware of his position. He's not going to be controlled by Irania. That sucks. And also, he's going to be facilitating things more actively. So I think it would be funny if that happened. Does that make sense? Or have any coherence?
Well, okay, so When we get to the intermission, I had some thoughts about Gamzee and how they relate to Terezi and Karkat. And I think that like this is like Bucky was saying, this is a framing question. Like you want to show that Gamzee is a sympathetic character who's being used in a very negative way, who's being abused by this like narrative force. They are becoming an unwilling tool of the inevitable narrative that we are going to ultimately subvert in this work, and part of that is liberating Gamzee from this hell that they've been forced to live in. And I think that like Bucky's take on like having Gamzee be like menacing because they don't want to talk to the alpha kids, like they don't want to be involved with this like reminder of the fact that they are being forced into this position. They're trying to do the bare minimum of what they're required to do in order to get by and to survive. Like this Gamzee situation in the narrative reminds me of the attitude of somebody who is trapped in an abusive relationship of some kind, abusive parent or an abusive spouse or something like that, where you get to the point where all you want to do is get from point A to point B every day and not be dead and survive long enough to be unconscious for a while and then wake up and you do it all again. And like Gamzee is in that place. Gamzee is forced to do certain things and they just want to survive it. Like they're aware that this is fucked up and they don't want to be doing it, but they don't have a choice. And
That's just my Sigma grind set.
they will not be saying that at all.
No, that's one of those things that JoJo just says because it's cursed.
Yeah,
don't take that seriously.
But like I think that is, yeah, sure. If you want to have Gamzee going from the meteor to the alpha session, sure. Actually, that could work with some of the stuff I'm going to suggest with Gamzee for the intermission. So yeah, I'm fine with that. It's framing. It's not plot specifics. It's framing.
With Gamzee, I also love the fake god tier. That's a very cool touch. I like that for him. He can keep that. Making it clear that it's fake, I think, is important. It's not very clear. It is clear, but there is still debate in the Homestuck community whether it's real or not. It's not. They didn't make that very
I mean,
specific.
Daft makes a good point that who is granted god tier is like, it's sort of like a denotation of who's like worthy in the text in terms of a certain thing, and like it is weirdly racialized for everybody but Terezi, really, and Terezi's kind of punished for not being able to go god tier.
Everyone except Terezi and Mina, because Mina's like the one that's really heavily black coded that does god tier.
Yeah, but like she's a special one.
Yeah.
At the she's I don't think she actually falls under the she's one of the good ones in terms of like saying, oh well she's like acceptable for my bigotry, but Andrew Hussey likes her.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. She's acceptable because the author figure says that she is. Yeah, I think that maybe like I think that again like that is a thing in Homestuck, and I don't think it was intentional, but like you can make it intentional to make a statement of it, because like the kind of like one of the overarching themes that we've kind of like developed here is that you've got this kind of like primary narrative timeline that is in many ways a bad thing, and it's run by a bad person, and you should change it if you can. And like part of that can be that there's this like weird bullshit with the god tier and who gets to be god tier, and Gamzee doesn't get to be god tier because Gamzee is a tool of the narrative. So this is just a way of like, oh yeah, you can have the costume, sure, you can pretend, but you're not ever going to be the real thing. And like
making that intentional
by giving Gamzee, and like we are ultimately rewarding Gamzee by giving them a way out of this, a genuine actual way out of this thing, where they are a victim and a survivor of the narrative rather than this weird boogeyman monster character slash joke character, depending on what mood the author is in. And I think that like it is a thing, but I think it's something that does actually support what we're doing with the story. Just like that's something that has to be maybe like intention. It is intentional and maybe should be like hinted at a little.
I agree. The last thing that has to do with the Alpha Kids timeline that we have to talk about, unfortunately, before we get into the other stuff, such as the Cherubs and the Meteor, is Trickster mode.
Fucking lose it.
It adds nothing except
it adds nothing.
Oh
It's
man,
fucking
teenagers
stupid.
can be horny when they do alcohol and drugs.
Absolutely,
really?
fucking get rid of it. There's no reason to have it.
Yes, it was a joke by Hussey. I do think there is one nugget of salvageable something that we can take from this, and that is, they are given a gift by Caliborn and Calliope, which is interesting. That could be more of a symbolic thing, and also the Trickster mode does symbolize a lot of things for each character, sort of their lowest point, because it happens because Jane is miserable, because Jake is being a tool, because Dirk is a clingy fucker, and then on the sidelines of that triangle is Roxy, who is being completely fucking neglected, even though she is being a champ and has quit drinking for like, I think it was like a year at that point. I might be wrong. But everyone is at their lowest point. So, if not Trickster mode, we can just have, everyone falls off the wagon here. This is their lowest point. It sucks. They all end up drunk, hungover, on Prospit and Durst on their slabs like normal.
Just show them doing, just show them at a low point, like without all the weird, crazy nonsense. Like, it's like, this doesn't add anything.
Without the
peachiness.
peachiness.
Also, it does yeah, fuck you.
Sorry.
Peachy, wink, air quotes. Fucking God, I'm not going to talk about that.
We're not going to explain that for anyone who doesn't understand.
Yeah, no, if you're listening to this, you probably know what we're talking about. If not, don't worry about it.
I would like to say, so I can see why we did this to some extent. Like, I can see where the themes are coming from. It's the opposite of grimdark, is like sugar happy, right? It's,
I guess.
It's the, like, we now know that we're leading, that, like, candy and meat to Andrew Hussey represent, so the candy doesn't just represent, like, a lack of inhibition and, like, substances. It also represents, fanon, game-breaking knowledge. It represents not cheating, but, like, never wanting strife and desiring complacency because it's what's easiest, and, like, taking sort of the easy route. So, like, these are all things that we, like, now know, not only because of Trickster mode, but because of post-canon content are sort of associated thematically with candy. I can see both retroactively and sort of in the themes that we have why this was selected, and the fact that it was applied to everyone and not one person was that it's sort of intended to be contagious, again, because it's a substance and because it's the opposite of grimdark, which is very isolating. But it doesn't do much narratively.
Yeah.
Like, the same thing that it does can just be served by our characters hitting a low point without this, like, weird mind-numbing intervention sort of thing that goes on. Like,
It's so annoying.
I had an idea.
It's also as sort of that, like, that term that's been deemed reader hostile, that like Homestuck is like, it like doesn't want you to read it, but I don't think that we need to pretend that that's like a literary device that's being employed. It's just called being a dick.
Reader antagonistic. That's the term that I always use.
Yeah, reader antagonistic is good, but that's, you can still, like, being antagonistic is being a dick.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Yeah. There's a good way to lampshade this in a rewrite, which is Caliborn. They send their juju, and Caliborn is like, they never even licked it. I can't believe it. I wanted to see them go crazy. And Roxy says something like, that sounds fucking horrible. Why would anyone want that? Just be like super.
Yeah, there is a value to having them at a low point. Again, I think it fits in very well with the theming that we're establishing. Also, if we're going to establish some level of communication between alpha and beta kids, again, I have some thoughts about Rose and Roxy that kind of Elvis is required to set that up. So yeah, but fuck Trickster mode. Trickster mode was stupid.
Yeah, we can even have like some kind of not Trickster mode itself, but some kind of their low point is emblem or
dude, I know
symbolized by what's you saying?
They're all 21. In fact, because of they've all been in their session for, they start their session in November, so we are building up to Jane's. Y'all, are we building up to Jane's 16th or 17th birthday in the original comic?
And the original was 16. Her Sweet 16 is specifically when this went down.
Oh, so you're building up to your 21st birthday.
Right, so we're building up to her 21st birthday. Jane is exactly the type of person who would refuse to drink alcohol before her 21st birthday, even after Earth is dead. So you don't even need to introduce Trickster Candy. She just throws a party and everyone gets trashed.
Yeah. Yes.
Hey, Jane.
Oh my God,
Roxy literally falls off the wagon. Jane is
you want to have some vodka
bitch to Roxy and is tempting her with alcohol. Jake gets drunk to deal with the fact that Dirk is there. Dirk gets drunk to deal with the fact that Jake is there. However, Dirk, I get that it's a heart thing. I never actually really liked that Dirk wasn't affected by Trickster mode. It felt like a cop-out. Like, I get that it's like, Dirk is so psychologically entrenched in his bullshit that he can't get intoxicated. But, like, yeah, whatever. It's really funny if he gets drunk and he doesn't talk because he's, like, too scared because he's so drunk. Like, God, it can't just be like that.
He's the type of drunk that, like, that your uncle gets at the family reunion, where he gets drunk, crosses his arms, and sits in a chair silently. He's like the type of drunk that's just he falls asleep. He drinks schnapps and just falls asleep in a chair. That's terrible.
But you can't tell because he's got the fucking shades on. Roxy's talking at him and thinks that he's fully awake and listening.
You're such a good listener, Derek.
And only figures it out when, like, Jane comes over and, like, pokes him drunkenly a bit too hard and he just falls over. Like,
oh my God, that's good.
So the thing about this is now, okay, so I've constructed this scenario in which they're all getting drunk at Jane's 21st birthday. Nobody has drank a significant amount of alcohol except for Roxy. Everybody is piss drunk. Everybody's doing stupid shit. And we've got, if we're going to start them off in 2021, even if we don't start them off with exactly the same social media that we have right now, just because they don't have the internet doesn't mean that they didn't, like, film a bunch of videos and shit and, like, save it, and probably, like, with this stuff that they've alchemized, that probably means that there's, like, I don't know, shitty JPEG artifact prints of the photos that have been, like, printed out and plastered around. The Dursite rags have gotten a hold of it, of, like, some pictures and stuff, and are spreading them around. Like, there's definitely... If they're adults, they can get drunk and fuck up, and we don't need to have a metaphor about it.
Yeah, it's not a very special episode. It's just a fucking story at this point.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, I like that. Because Trickster mode is kind of baffling, because I think Hussey midway through realized it was fucking dumb and just cut away and said in the narrative, "This is stupid." I think he says explicitly to Caliborn, "That was dumb." Like, because he's talking at this point to Caliborn on his thing, and he says, like, "This sucks. I hate this." which is
Yep.
true.
Like, yeah, dude, you chose this for yourself. You picked it. You built the assets and you drew it and you put it out in the world, and now first draft,
you
baby.
rotoscoped those dances that people were doing and put Jane's head on them. I don't know. I do like the trickster designs.
God. It's
Maybe it would be fun to have like them dress up as tricksters for fun. Like they're doing some kind of
they
themed
just
party
like, put
that they
on
all
a bunch
kind of
of
hate.
stupid clothes because
You-
they're fucking
Yeah.
drunk.
You want that one episode of She-Ra where they do D&D and they dress up like the 80s cartoon? Is
Sure,
what you
yeah.
want?
Yeah. I think
Yes.
that's
Basically
fun.
that.
Like
Yes.
an illusion. An illusion that still serves a purpose in our news story.
Or, remember how the original Trickster mode was it a fucking Easter egg? Can it just be an Easter egg again? If we're gonna, one of the things that we said is we might add more, like, I proposed this earlier. I don't know that this is a thing that you're actually going to be capable of in, like, the rewrite that you're doing, but, like, in the theoretical concept of the thing where, like, we have time and money to throw at it, I would add more flashes and walk-around games and such.
The
And
rewrite of
I-
a perfect world, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The one
The
where I go
ideal
back
version
to
of
my
Homestuck.
Shark Tank funds and I repitch Homestuck.
Oh god, that would be a fucking great episode of Shark Tank. That would be fucking
Viz
hilarious.
Media, I am pitching to you.
I am pitching to you the
there-
entire 5-act Homestuck.
All
yes.
5 acts of Homestuck.
All 5 acts of Homestuck.
Cascade
Oh
who?
man.
Without Cascade.
Shout out to Viz Media for doing a good job.
Yeah.
They own Naruto. They don't have to do and Sailor Moon. They don't have to do a
No,
good
they
job.
don't give a shit. They don't have to do anything. Honestly, I think it's hilarious that they fucked up and they thought that was it. That's funny to me. That is great. We live in a great timeline. We don't need those fucking books.
We don't.
They
That's
didn't-
not necessary.
They didn't think that was it. They're cutting their fucking losses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
It's-
Pretending
you're getting
that's
to-
it.
Yeah, you're getting to the point of the comic where it's incomprehensible as a printed work. Like, there's no way you can translate this shit to a printed work. So
It's
No.
not a comic anymore, so they don't have to print it, so they're done, so they can... Like, again... No, we can't get into it. I can't get into it. I will be here all night.
That's okay. We'll have a bonus episode about just the print
Jojo,
media
we have yet
fiasco.
to record a single bonus episode that we've been promised. Like,
Yes.
We can't keep promising
Bonus-
bonus episodes.
Bonus episode is if I ever say bonus episode, assume I'm joking. I'm sorry if I got anyone's hopes up. The singular only bonus episode that is in the works in any respect is the Dancester one with Yoet's Crow. We only have really one, so if I say bonus episode, assume I'm joking. That said, Trickster mode is a good segue into the next part, which is the Cherubs, which I like. Cherubs are... I genuinely... I was rereading some Cherub stuff. I don't have anything. I like this. It's a very concise story. It's focused. There's only 2 characters involved, plus Gamzee, who is their sort of dad, in quotes. It's just a story about siblings, one of whom is trying to murder the other of whom is trying to mend their relationship because she literally can't do anything else because, he's the only person she knows. I like it.
yeah, I have two things to be aware of. One is a change and one is just a FYI. Again, with the Gamzee stuff, we need to be very intentional about what's going on. This is something that Gamzee doesn't want to be a part of but has no choice in. The other part, and this is a removal, is I would lose all the Hussey shit. Hussey doesn't exist. In
No,
this
Hussey is... I think there is something meta you could do with Caliborn, like he can read the actual text of...
Oh, we're doing
the-
meta
the-
shit, but Hussey is not the...
No.
The terminal stuff where Caliborn is talking to the author, I think
To
you
the
can
author,
keep.
yes.
But
not
Orange Man showing up being like, "Hello, 13-year-old girl, would you marry me, a 40-year-old
Man.
man, please?" This is a joke. For legal purposes, this is
Right.
a joke. Nothing I've ever done in my life is like this. For legal purposes, this is a joke.
Oh, God.
Yeah, what if we didn't
Not
do
doing
that, actually?
We're not going to do that. Yeah.
What
Yeah,
if
like
that was
Hussey
funny?
does not exist.
Right, because I already made the point about like Doc Scratch being kind of representative of this narrative force, the narrative as it exists as a singular inevitable unit at the start of the comic. We've got this kind of like the way that the comic is supposed to be, and then we're going to have the characters intentionally break that and escape from the comic, because the way the comic is supposed to be ends with them all dying. And the author character can exist. We're just gonna lose all of the Hussey specific stuff, and also all of the weird, child stuff. Yeah.
There was a... At the time Homestuck was coming out, Andrew Hussey really was a character. He was aloof enough and, like, sort of enigmatic enough that he could sort of exist as a character on the internet who was making a webcomic and a character in his own webcomic. Like, it did sort of work at the time, but I think both the way Andrew Hussey himself behaved and the way that the internet operates now as opposed to a full decade ago, that is no longer... The level of meta that we're working on, like, I think is no longer ironic enough to pull that off, and Andrew Hussey himself poisoned the well anyways.
Yeah, exactly. It is now meta in a way that is designed to facilitate the telling of a story rather than simply being there for like weird irony. Like, the meta we're dealing with here is actually functional to the story. Like, it's part of the fucking plot.
You could even have him talk to like Doc Scratch or someone who represents the narrative. I think we can keep that, but like we said, we've said this in past episodes that Hussey will not be in the rewrite because why would he be? There's no purpose that would serve.
I actually kind of think it's... I do think it's kind of funny that that in the original comic, Hussey can't talk to Doc Scratch because Doc Scratch goes limp in the presence of the author because he can't, like, he's omniscient enough to know that, like, Toy Story rules say he can't be present in front of the author. That's funny. That was funny. I did like that. I don't know how well that translates. I don't remember if Andrew Hussey ever actually talked to Scratch over, like, the typewriter or whatever, but, like, I kind of think it's funny that he can't, and I really think it's especially funny given the revelation that Andrew Hussey does just talk like that, like Doc Scratch does.
Yeah.
To give a recap, though, for the listeners, because it sounds like we're in a consensus to keep most of the Cherub stuff the same. The story goes in this section where the beginning of the section they're introduced, and in the end it's revealed that Caliborn has killed Calliope, predominated, and is now starting his own even more fucked up and dead session than the Alpha Kids, which is going to result in him becoming Lord English. We'll get into Lord English very next. But Callie dies, remains relevant through her death. All that stuff. Good stuff. I like that story. It's very isolated. Hussey is good at those kind of, like I said, the broad strokes, and we only see the broad strokes of that story, so I like it. Now, attached to that is Lord English. And Lord English appears in this section, and I think that the impact of Lord English is totally undercut, because Lord English in Homestuck, as well as the rewrite, is the big bad who controls all of the other big bads ever. He is, he's bigger than Bec Noir, he's bigger than Doc Scratch, he's bigger than anyone we've seen. He has engineered everything very specifically to facilitate his arrival. So everything up until this point that we realize Lord English is pulling the strings is Lord English's plan. That in mainline Homestuck is not explained. Lord English just shows up and kills some ghosts. And that has led people to believe that Lord English is just some ghost-killing bad guy, which I think sucks. And one of the hugest reasons is because Lord English cannot speak. I think that is one of the changes that I would make, is make Lord English able to interact.
We do see him speak a few times. He speaks to Damara when she runs away, and he says, "You there, girl." That's him talking. He does talk, but he very, very rarely talks, because the few times he does, he gets like one gigantic letter at a time. There's another instance where he picked up a record, and he said, "Who's this douchebag?" And you had to scroll down to read "Who's this douchebag?" Like, he has spoken a couple times, but he textually has a booming voice that's narratively relevant enough you have to read it one letter at a time.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, he's not that he can't talk, it's that it's very rare that he does because it has an impact, I guess.
I would build on that by saying it is narratively relevant, like you say, in theory, but all he ends up saying is like, "Who's this douchebag?" which is a totally pointless statement that doesn't advance anything. I think doing that would still be good, to have him say some booming voice that like takes place over big text is how we can convey that in the written word. That would be great if he says something unique and useful, as opposed to one of Homestuck's many, many, many stupid running jokes. What were you saying, Janaya?
I was just gonna say, I think that's a good idea. I like the idea that they, he's not suddenly becoming a fucking monologue factory, but like to have what he says be more meaningful, I guess.
I also like how in original Homestuck, Hussey does this thing where he will tell you a connection. Like he'll say, he will imply very heavily, to the point where everyone understands, Lord English is Caliborn, but later on. And so the intrigue is not who is Caliborn or who is Lord English. The intrigue is, how did he get there? And that's what Homestuck explores. I like that too. And that's why Caliborn's story is very compelling. That's why a lot of people online have claimed that Caliborn is the true protagonist of Homestuck, which I think has a lot of... I don't think that's true, but I think it has a lot of weight to view it from that lens. What are your guys' general thoughts on Lord English as, not just in this section, but as the big bad of Homestuck?
I think that Lord English works in conjunction with other villains. Like the villains play individual roles within the story. So like in the rewrite, and honestly kind of in the original comic, the ultimate bad guy is the narrative itself. It's the story that inevitably dooms you to die. But like there are elements of that are facilitated through different characters. Lord English is the ominous, unstoppable physical force, the monster that can't be killed. The Condis represents the power of the system to control things. Doc Scratch represents the embodiment of this kind of like narrative conceit that starts the whole thing. Well, he's part of society. He's more like the overall concept, whereas the Condis is more of the nitty gritty of actual like imperialist society. So like they all represent facets of this system of control and exploitation, but different facets of it. And then they also represent different facets of like narrative tropes, as far as what the villains are. So I think that they all have their role, and I think Lord English does function very well as this very ominous, somewhat enigmatic, unkillable monster type character. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it, basically.
I'll rephrase my original question. Do you guys think it would be better to have because we have to make a choice here, in my opinion, because Homestuck itself is caught between these two extremes. Should Lord English be a character who we care about, or should he be a force of nature who is just kind of destroying everything and needs to be taken over? Which is the better? What is the better way to embody that narrative that you were talking about, John?
I think that Lord English functions better as the sort of force of nature character. Like they're part of the terror of Lord English is that they're not a character you can like reason with. And also it contrasts with Caliborn, who, while he's petulant and immature, is also like at least a type of reasoning. I don't know. He strikes me as very facts don't care about your feelings type character. But
I don't like that.
Lord English. Yeah, a little Ben Shapiro or fucking Charlie Kirk or some shit like that. But but Lord English is this like, force. Lord English is no longer something you can reason with, and like I've got thoughts about how to get rid of Lord English when we get to that'll play into that. So like, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I'm curious to hear what Bucky's take on it is.
Yes.
I do think that, like, Caliborn sort of swan diving from, like, I like that he and Calliope are both sort of the different types of fans or creators where, like, Caliborn is like, no, I hate that. You will look at my OCs. My OCs are the most important. Like, they're not... I would say they're two different sides of, like, creation. They're like, my OCs are the most important ever, and, like, I purely work in the realm of fan creation where I use fandoms in real life as inspiration, and I'm quite comfortable working without my own character, or, like, without having to create my own characters for me. But I think some of that was, like, misguided, where, like, that's not really how, like, I guess, yes, that, like, that's neither of those on their own work. You have to sort of draw inspiration from real life and for your own original ideas that of course aren't fully original, but your own spin on them is like a new way to do it if you're a good enough artist. Like, I would just like to get to, like, to really get to the idea that, like, the true answer is a synthesis of the two, and it's not even the only true answer, it's just one of the ways that you can solve that, like, how do you art problem. Like, the question of how do you art is an ongoing conversation that will be had until there's no humans left.
Yeah. I actually had... You made me think of this. So there are... This connects... Okay, I said as a joke before that Lord English is... Or Caliborn is kind of like Ben Shapiro. But he does resemble one very specific type of reactionary intellectual. And that is... I think there's a real tangible connection to be drawn between someone like him and someone like Jordan Peterson, who they use the power of narrative to try to explain things about, like, humanity, or they try to overextend the power of narrative, and they try to make these insane theories about, like, stories affecting people, and that could realistically be Caliborn's goal. Is saying he's basically saying, the world is a story, so I will make the world a better place by making it a story with a villain to fight, with all this stuff. That what's up? What?
Did I ever tell you about the lobster? You have to consider the lobster. You have to consider the lobster, Jojo.
What if on the other side of that coin? What if Caliborn sounded like Jordan Peterson? Calliope, I tricked you. My king was wearing a little hat, so you are actually losing.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
And then when she's like, you can't fucking do it, he starts crying. No, I think there is that sort of poisonous notion of narratives, like, controlling us, and Caliborn leading heavily into that. That would be cool. The other thing with Caliborn is, like, a lot of people believe he is autistic coded.
Coded?
Or
he says he has a learning
he's not
disability.
coded. Yes, he has a learning disability. I'm not opposed to that, but I think that it does in original Homestuck fall into the villain with a disability deal, which I don't like.
It does suck that the only character that's canonically autistic that's canonically has, like, I'm gonna say that he's autistic because I think that could be pretty easily read as autism, but it's actually not specific enough. He canonically has a learning disability, which could be a lot of different things, and it sucks that the only person who canonically has a learning disability that isn't used as an insult, I do not believe that, like, I know we went over this, Andrew Hussey did not canonize Nepeta as autistic by having Karkat call her autistic as an insult. That doesn't count. Yeah, if you derive joy from having that as, like, a headcanon, fine, good, but, like, it was an insult, and it wasn't, and if you can take something uplifting out of that, fine, God, Lord knows we've had to do a fuckload of that with a lot of different representation in Homestuck, but, like, you deserve better than that, actually. We deserve better than that, actually, and especially when it comes down the line later with, well, I can't help being evil, I have a learning disability.
Yep. It's not great. Like I said, it's not bad if he has some thing going on, but it's bad if that is the reason why he's evil. That kind of sucks.
There's power in positive representation. Like, I follow the Writing with Color blog I have for a long time, and, like, they have like writers of color who answer questions about, like, how to represent certain characters in writing. And, like, one of the biggest things that they say is, like, I mean, it's not like you can't have a marginalized villain. It's just that, like, if the marginalized villain is your only example of that instance of marginalization, then it starts to look suspicious. Like, if you have other autistic characters in the narrative canonically, then sure, go ahead. But, like, if he's the only autistic character, why did you make that choice?
Yes. It's the quintess. My dad always said, and I live by this, no, nothing will make you an asshole except for being an asshole. Like, you are not an asshole.
It's the same thing as saying, like, I think we shot this down, but it's the same thing as saying, like, oh yeah, Eridan can be trans femme, but she's still a fascist even if she is.
Yes.
Like, the
diversity win. The fish fascist is a transbian.
The transbian. Yeah, like, the thing about it is that, like, an axis of marginalization is not an axis of morality. You are still a person with opinions that can be led astray. Conversely, this is why it's not actually funny when Trump supporters who don't get a COVID vaccine die. Obviously, there's some nuance there, but, like, it's not funny when they die of COVID because they were taught that the vaccine was like a government conspiracy. That's just sad.
They made a decision, but it's in some way it's not their fault.
Yeah.
Much like it's not Caliborn's fault.
It does still have consequences, and at a certain point you can't let people get away with hurting people. But like, I don't know. You can recognize that without, like, saying that, like, marginalized people can't be angry. I just want to make it clear that, like, this isn't actually, you can't be mad at Trump supporters because they got fucked over. Like, no, I'm going to be mad every time that I see a Trump bumper sticker on somebody's car, because I have to exist around these people.
Oh, I just had a horrible thought.
Yeah.
You know those Punisher skulls with, like, Trump hair that you see sometimes?
No,
on, like, bumper stickers.
I've never seen that.
I do in my area. But, like, what if those had troll horns? That would be bad.
Specifically Vriska's horns. Anyways.
Yes. Anyway, let's talk about the meteor.
Let's talk about the meteor.
Yes. Oh, I have thoughts about the meteor. Yes.
Nobody subtweet me.
Yeah. The meteor is... Okay, so I want to talk about the meteor in brief before we get into it. The meteor, I want to put this in perspective. The meteor is one of the most iconic settings in Homestuck, because this is where, like, so much shipping goes down. This is where so many AUs back in the day go down. This was, like, the fucking setting du jour of all RP sites. The meteor is, like, one of the most important and interesting parts of Homestuck, and one of the more interesting parts of Act 6. And all I want to say is they decided to make these intermissions very short, very brief, sort of checking in with the meteor folks, just as a curiosity. No, I don't think that's a good idea. I would like to bring them a little more to the forefront, give them some more things to do. You guys can discuss that at. We'll start with Janiyah this time, while I use the bathroom.
Okay, so I have two things in particular that like really irked me about the meteor stuff that I wanted to talk about. One of them is the Rosemary stuff and Rose's alcoholism, and the other is the Terezi and Gamzee stuff. So Rosemary and the alcoholism thing, like Rose's alcoholism in canon isn't handled great. It's not portrayed in a way that's very like either accurate or particularly compassionate. It doesn't really mean anything because it gets somehow fixed with the retcon. Whether or not you want to attribute it to Vriska or not, it doesn't matter. It's still stupid. And then everything with Rosemary is kind of, I don't know, feels weird to me. So one of the things I would say is like we have Roxy as a recovering alcoholic, and who has also, as of the disastrous session, fallen off the wagon and has drank again, whatever implications that has for her specifically. I do like the idea of Rose struggling with substance abuse because of all of the horrible shit she's had to go through. And then to have her able to talk to Roxy about it. Like, they can actually have a, meaningful conversation of some kind, and, like, basically, like, this is going to set up working through these issues in a way that doesn't feel hackneyed and Vriska-based. And then, I've got a lot of...
Hackney-pilled and Vriska-based.
Yeah, exactly. And the stuff with Rosemary is like similarly. I think like with all of their relationships, I think you can do more to like put more depth in it, especially if you're spending more time focusing on it. Like Rosemary felt very like, here's your Wallua couple, tosses you Rosemary, have fun with that. We're done. And like to have them actually be like interacting with each other again with the substance abuse stuff, to have like Rose and Kanaya actually talk about that, to have it actually matter. Like having more room for this to breathe would help a lot. And then the shit with Terezi and Gamzee, which in canon sucks ass. There's a lot of weird like racial coding stuff there. Where you have the character that's coded very much like a black dude and the character that's like a white lady, and you've got a lot of this sort of like very specific to like white feminism, not great shit, with the scary black man that hurts the innocent white woman, and it's like that's bad stuff. And just like in general, it's just shitty. And because we're treating Gamzee with a lot more consideration, Gamzee's no longer this scary monster man. I think that what I would maybe do with that is have Terezi and Gamzee interact and talk, but like they're both people that are dealing with shit. And to have them rather than trying to manifest that in this weird, like disgusting quote unquote relationship that they have, to have them kind of like talking past each other about like the individual stuff that they're going through, where Gamzee is dealing with like this role that they're being forced into in the narrative, and Terezi is dealing with kind of the same thing because she's been, basically she's had to kill Vriska, and that was part of this whole, narrative inevitability. That's the way things had to be before the retcon. And I think that both of them having that experience would kind of like, I don't know, I think it would be cool to have them at least trying to communicate about that, but also they're both in such a shitty place that they can't really talk about it.
Yeah, I'm like torn on that because I think that you are correct on all points. However, all of Homestuck already happened, so
yeah,
there's baggage with those two characters being like that, even if you are right about the fact that they would relate to each other. Like I think that would be different. That way you could do it. You'd probably have to handle it super carefully. But like I guess really the issue would be like, if you're gonna do that, God, I don't know.
It's a very delicate balance to strike. Like, I would like to unpack that baggage. Like, they don't have to have deep conversations, but to like try to communicate about that, to sort of give the indication that these are both characters that are struggling with what are in some ways similar issues, but also to illustrate that their position is so different. Like, where Terezi is coming from is not where Gamzee is coming from.
Terezi was good on Alternia.
Mhm.
Alternia was great. Even with her being blind, it was great. And for Gamzee, it was a nightmare. And like, honestly, if you're gonna talk about people who could commiserate over stuff, it's Gamzee and Rose. Gamzee would be struggling with being cut off from their only source of substance use, and Rose is struggling with... So, the thing that Homestuck was trying to do was that substance use is, to some extent, hereditary. Like, if you're around it, you sort of learn that this is a thing that you do. So, like, Gamzee is struggling with being disconnected from their substance use at the same time that Rose is struggling with being thrust into a situation where substance use would be great, and not, like, actually great, but, like, she would like to use some substances, and I always thought it was weird that she just, like, suddenly started making alcohol until I went to college and I started dating this dude. I was actually talking about this dude earlier, to you, Janaya, but I started dating this dude, and he started, like, vaping. And then he started increasing the amount of nicotine in the vape juice. He was like, well, because the nicotine will help me focus because I have ADHD. It doesn't work like that. And then he started smoking cigarettes after that. I'm like, yeah, that's where that was always going. And, like, but he explicitly was like, yeah, no, it's gonna help me focus more. And then, like, yeah, and, like, now that I partake in green pastures and I definitely drank my fair share of alcohol in college. I have a fic where I sort of, like, if I was gonna introduce something to Rose's alcoholism, is that, like, you're right, she's trying to bury something. She's trying to, like, deal with the horrors of her own mind.
I've written that version of Rose, and it works a lot better. Also, everything you're saying gave me a good idea for how to deal with Terezi and Gamzee, and also to incorporate Rose. I would have it so that Terezi attempts to talk to Gamzee to be like, look, I'm in the position you are. Feel bad for me. And Gamzee's like, you don't understand what I've been through. And then, blows her off and then ends up talking to Rose. Because Rose, you're right, Rose and Gamzee have a lot more in common here. Terezi, I think, is in a position where she's going to, like, think that she has something in common with Gamzee. Like, oh, I know what it feels like to be oppressed now because I had to make this horrible decision.
ICP Rose arc.
I think that like, having Terezi trying to, like, what ends up being a very self-centered approach, because she wants somebody to make her feel better about a shitty decision she had to make, and she also wants somebody to make her feel better about her place in Alternia. She wants somebody to be like, it's okay, it wasn't your fault, everything is fine, which is not how that works.
And nobody's going to give that to her, but Gamzee especially is not going to.
Yeah, exactly. And she's going to look around at everyone and see, oh, this is the outsider who's been, fucked over by everything. I'm going to talk to them because, like, hey, I get it now. And Gamzee's not going to engage with that. And, like, I think that could be a good way to establish Terezi's state of mind for later, and also to give Gamzee a lot more humanity, where they're not the abuser. That's so bad.
Not deep cut, but for We Know the Devil players, Gamzee is Venus.
Yes. Yes.
You cut out, and I thought you said Gamzee is penis.
Gamzee is Venus.
No.
Gamzee is Venus. Gamzee is the other reason why Gamzee... And now I do have to credit, before I go any further, I do have to credit Gamzee Rose parallels to Momo. I am just saying things that Momo has said more articulately, but the other reason that Gamzee and Rose would get along well is they're both girls. And the thing about it is that they're both girls, and depending on how you want to run with it, they're both trans girls. So I think that that's another thing that they could potentially get along with. And if we're gonna have June already established at this point, but we may as well give the clown a little gender too.
Yeah, and I think that also it does play into the dealing with Rose's alcoholism in a meaningful way, where I think we completely lost all the stuff with Gamzee and like the drug shit. I think we just threw that in the trash, if I remember correctly. So you don't have that parallel, but you still have a character who knows what it feels like to be to have your identity subverted by forces that are beyond your ability to control them. Like Gamzee has to deal with being a tool of the narrative. Rose was in a very similar position with like the horror terrors and the grimdark stuff. And like Rose is in the way we're writing things, Rose is dealing with this by falling into substance abuse, which is something that Roxy also in our version of things used that to try to cope with shit that was happening in like the destroyed Earth. Gamzee is representative of an approach to surviving that isn't based on like trying to escape it, because Gamzee is just trying to get through it. They're the survivor who isn't trying to medicate. They're just trying to like count the seconds until they can get through it. And like I think that kind of like perspective would be helpful to Rose as well. And I think that having that humanity and that conversation is going to show that Gamzee is not the evil monster character, and it's gonna contextualize a lot of the stuff that's happening throughout Act 6 point whatever the fuck we're doing with all that stuff. So like yeah, I would absolutely include that. Also the Gamcar stuff is good actually. I would leave that. I wouldn't. I mean, it's not exactly the same as it is in the comic because like Gamzee is written differently, but like to have that relationship, I think is interesting and good, and like I don't know, it gives Gamzee a lot more depth as a character in this version of it than just abuser.
Karkat and Kanaya high-fiving with their weird people weird purple goth girlfriends.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot more, and if we're gonna expand the scope of like the Meteor stuff to be like you get more opportunities to have conversations with these people. And then yeah.
The what the fuck are we talking about? I've just been battling a demon.
We're talking about a lot of stuff. Yeah, Rosemary,
okay,
Rose alcoholism, Gamzee and Rose talking. Terezi tries to talk to Gamzee and doesn't go anywhere with it.
My agenda.
Yes.
Nepeta is alive. That means Terezi can have a girlfriend.
That does mean Terezi can have a girlfriend.
Nice. Our true colors are coming out. This was all just a vehicle to have...
Terezi ends up like hiding in some isolated corner of the Meteor, annoyed that Gamzee doesn't want to talk to her and no one wants to talk to her, and finds
I have an idea.
Nepeta doesn't want to talk to her either, but they come to a begrudging... Like, that's the thing is, like, we already said that Nepeta's like, I don't want anything to do with you people. And, like, Nepeta still is, I don't want to have anything to do with you people. This is not a Neprezi of the, like, they are cute and are peeing together variety. This is Nepeta of a, like... begrudging, like, all right, this is Nepeta is like full Wolverine Logan mode here, and is like begrudgingly like parenting Terezi a little bit.
That's perfect, because Logan is also a fucking shrimp. He's short.
Yes, Wolverine is 5'2" canonically. You're welcome.
So my idea is this: Terezi gets dejected because she tries to like court Gamzee and it fails, and he's like, That's pretty cringe. I gotta say, I'm sorry. And so she goes, hides out in the meteor. She enters like a dark room, lies on the floor, starts crying, and then she hears an echoey voice from the corner, and it says, "Hey, you want to wear this fursuit?"
Hey, why are you crying on the floor like a little bitch?
Can you not get my floor wet?
Hey,
Do you think? Are you more of an otter or a bunny?
you're crying really loudly and it's scaring off the feral wildlife that's established an ecosystem in this vent system, and I'm really
Terezi, you're
hungry.
scaring the hose.
Terezi, your crying is scaring all the hoes that I'm hunting for Bloodsport.
That's perfect. And they forge a
I
relation,
don't know
or
what half of the shit you just said even means.
The hoes, Terezi.
or what? Another thing that would be funny is Nepeta is alive, and Dave, like, okay, this is fucking stupid, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway. So Nepeta becomes like the cryptid that like Dave repeatedly sees. He doesn't know Nepeta by name. So all he knows is like, there's a fucking cat girl in the walls. I swear to God, please believe me. And everyone is
Nobody
like,
believes
Dave,
him.
shut
Her
the fuck
eyes-
up. This is a prank.
Her
And
eyes-
he's like terrified to go around.
Her eyes do the thing the cats do, where they like flash, and he's like, "Oh my god, there's eyes in the vents!" And everybody's like, "No, we like, hey," and then Carcat's like, "Hey, we got Gamesy out after the first week. Like they tried to crawl around in there, and I was like, no, you're dusty. you keep being dusty when you come cuddle with me. I'm not having it. Weird things get stuck to you. Absolutely not. So like, there's nothing in the vents anymore. Like the first week, sure, yeah, fine, but like not anymore." And Dave's like, I saw it. They're like eyes reflecting in the vents, and they're like, did one of like the carapaces? They found the lab where like the carapaces were being cloned. They're like, did one of them like get loose? And like Nepeta's definitely hunting the loose carapaces for food.
God.
Oh damn! I love
the
this.
random like centaur carapaces, because
Oh my
they have like
God.
weird creature ones.
The like what I'm
I-
imagining is like occasionally we flash to a couple panels and you just see like eyes flashing in the dark. Or, like you see like a centaur running and sort of scared and it's looking around and it's like, oh my god, and then you see like
yes.
eyes flashing in the dark and it's like running, and then the next panel is like it bleeding out and like the eyes and like a mouth dragging a bit of meat off into the shadows, and like that's all we see of
Dave is-
Nepeta for a bit, and Dave's like
No one believes me.
Also, Jojo, while you were gone, we did not talk about Dave Cat at all.
Okay.
I guess we need to talk about them eventually.
Fucking
I'm
listen.
making a face. You can't.
I
see.
like the idea of Dave Cat as like okay, I like Dave Cat, but it needs to happen way later. I don't like this on the Meteor because they have other shit to do. The focus should be on Karkat and Gamzee as more rails. So perhaps that would still leave Dave for being in love with Karkat. I think the main thing here should be like they become bros, and Karkat is confused by Dave, and Dave has all this subconscious like, I'm not gay. I like women. That means I'm not gay and don't like men. That's how it works. And he's just like suppressing his
You have to
bisexuality.
pick one.
Yes.
I
And that
picked
could be
women.
this arc. And then later on they become closer, and I think all you have to do really is give them some scenes together besides the
Yes.
penis Ouija. Very funny, penis Ouija.
Yeah.
Very funny, Andrew Hussey. Good job. Go back in your
Not
corner.
really, though.
no,
the thing
it's
is that
not.
it wasn't funny.
It wasn't funny.
That was the conversation where they're divvying up Terezi's time so that they can both date her.
Oh God, no! Oh, I blocked that out of my brain.
Yep,
Oh, fuck.
yep. You and every other fucking Homestuck fan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they that's why I don't like Dave Cat. They are Dave Cat by way of being jealous of Terezi, which sucks ass.
I just don't care about Dave Cat very much, but I do think that like okay, I'm
lesbian.
gonna I guess in my in our rewrite I can care about Dave Cat a little bit because they're
There you
not
go.
like they were. I think that focusing on Karkat and Gamzee's like more allegiance. I think having Dave like basically like being friends with Karkat, but also having like confusing feelings about him would be good. Like you get the establishment that Dave is into him, and Dave is also struggling with like sexuality stuff, which plays it back into like some of the toxic, the ways that he's been brought up, and like
man.
I think that works well.
All men in their early 20s know is mutual pining, eat hot chip, and lie.
Yeah.
There is
and then the other thing is later on, you can then resolve that tension where you have Dave, like, finally says something to Karkat, and Karkat's like,
Oh yeah, I like you too. You're pretty cool. Let's go kiss now.
That's a good on the fly
I
card.
don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this, Dave. I mean,
You mean we could have been making out for 3 years and you couldn't figure your shit out?
idiots.
To make up for lost time.
You're lucky I
Sorry.
like stupid men, Dave.
I'm not. Oh, there is a joke I wrote into the rewrite, to address the Dave Rose elephant in the room. This has little to do with the meteor, but I thought it was. I thought it would be funny to include.
Was that?
It's so Dave and Rose awaken on Durst, and they don't have time to explain it to everyone else. So Rose just says it like, we have something to tell you guys, but we can't get into it now." And June is like, "Oh God, you guys are dating, aren't you?" And they both immediately start yelling at John for being disgusting.
Oh my god.
Dave is like, "No, fuck. Oh God, I'm belching in my mouth." And Rose is like, "John, never say that again, you fucking sicko."
John, my stomach acid is currently melting the back of my throat. If you wish for me to ever hear my voice again and to not watch my esophagus melt from the inside out from suppressing the projectile vomiting I'm doing right now, you will never say that to me again.
Yeah, they're just disgusting because they in the rewrite they have like this very like fake antagonist, the sort of bond that's like, you are my worst enemy, like you are the most like, but if anyone makes fun of you, like
They will
that's
die.
my family, so
Yeah.
I have to defend your honor, even though you are worthless.
Very Wednesday and Pugsley. Very
Yes.
extremely
Yeah, exactly.
Wednesday and Pugsley.
Yes, they do have that dynamic.
And I love that dynamic between them because it opens up so many positions where Rose can just relentlessly hound Dave about his bullshit, and Dave can just be like pushed even further into his repression.
That's all I want.
Very, very good.
That's all I want from their sibling relationship.
You are pushing him
Dave,
in to the point where
Please
he
just
collapses.
admit you love men.
He collapses in on himself and becomes a black hole.
A bisexual black hole.
Right.
Dave comes out to Karkat and they start dating, and Dave comes up with increasingly elaborate excuses to like suddenly get up in the middle of a date and like run with Karkat to avoid being spotted by Rose, because
God.
the amount
Rose, it's
of
fine.
money
You can kiss your bros.
the amount of
I'm not
money
gay.
that Rose is going to make on the bets she has placed on Dave not being a heterosexual, he's like desperately trying to outrun that.
And Rose knew.
Oh, she knew.
Always knew.
She's been a lesbian from the beginning.
It's the twin telepathy.
Rewrite.
Yeah.
It would be like, there are guys like this who I have met in real life because I was friends with a lot of men who are like, it's fine to like hug and kiss your bros. There's nothing gay about that. There's nothing gay about like, kissing their cheek. They do it in Italy all the time. If they had straight gay sex in ancient Greece. And so Dave being like one of those guys.
Dave, everybody dreams about being a girl, right? Right? That's normal? Oh, well, yeah, obviously, because everyone dreams about kissing boys. It's not a thing that
Yes.
actually happens. It's okay for it to be a daydream. Okay, well, no, that was
Dave,
James. Like,
I
okay,
don't-
well.
I don't actually dream about kissing boys. I don't know if that's right or not.
I don't. Yeah. Meanwhile, Jade and Rose are just sitting cross-armed, like, why are they so fucking stupid?
Meanwhile, Jade and Rose are reenacting that image that's just like one girl laying on top of another girl doing each other's makeup.
Oh my god. I really love Jade Rosemary. I don't think it's happening in the rewrite, but I love it.
I don't see why not.
I mean, you got to
It's,
set it up. Like, how are you going to set it up is the question.
Well, I
post game, end game, whatever.
not
Yeah,
to
it
spoil
could be
anything,
anything.
but there are more interactions between Jade and Rose. Mostly
Oh, I know, yeah.
Jade telling like, because Rose is kind of a doomer because she really hates the game in the rewrite, and so she'll talk to Jade and be like, maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe we should all just give up and die. And Jade is like, can you shut the fuck up? You stop.
I actually really like the idea of it being a post game thing because like you get Jade, Rose, and Kanaya all interact with each other, and it gives them a chance to get to know each other, and then that like becomes a relationship that just like makes sense in post game.
This could be funny. Little relationship shenanigans. Rose could be sort of like smug about Jade and Kanaya sort of competing over her. And then it backfires when Kanaya and Jade get together and they like kiss and Rose is like, can I still be involved?
Oh my god, that's funny.
And they're like, okay, cool, yeah, that's fine. And then I think that would be an interesting commentary on like each of those three women embodies some archetypical femininity. And I could see them like having the quintessential gay experience of really loving your partner, but also being like viscerally incredibly jealous of their embodiment of your gender. And that could be fun. A little love triangle, but the triangle, it has all three sides. But that will be a story for another day. I think we can end that here. We were originally going to speak about the sessions finally coming together, but I think that would be a better discussion for next time.
Yeah. Also, ship stuff. We can talk about that next time too.
Yeah, this is the first time we've actually got into the shipping, but
No, the ship, the spaceship.
Sorry, the
I do want to talk about
yeah.
cotton candy, but we could do that next time.
Oh, I love cotton candy. Yes.
What a good oh man, everyone is lesbians in the rewrites.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Basically.
yes, we can have There was some commenter who said the classic, is everyone going to be gay? Are there any straight characters? You guys can have one straight relationship, and it's Aridin x Pfeffery that lasts for like 2 seconds, and Pfeffery immediately starts having a polycule with socks and Nepeta.
Here you go. Here, deep cut for Janaya. Pfeffery dates Aridin for 3 days, but he doesn't have any lips, so she dumps him.
I don't get that one. Or another straight ship you can have is June x any boy character.
Oh my god.
But the only straight ships that are allowed in our rewrite are trans straights.
Trans
so.
hets, yeah, that's the only.
Yeah,
you can
that's
have a
fine.
straight ship, monkey's paw curls, but they are transgenderers.
Yeah, there you go.
That's all I've got. But we should end off with the ship, like you said, and then I don't really have much on the ship. I think it serves its purpose.
Yeah.
There will be some rearranging of like where these specific events happen, but the idea of John going into the dream bubbles, having that struggle, finding the ring of life, all that stuff, that's fine for me.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's June at this point in ours. Because she fully she's out and physically transitioned thanks to the God tier stuff. My main addition here, and I've mentioned this a few times in the past, so this isn't new, and there's not really much depth to it. It's just that having June and Jade talk a bunch, having them talk about whatever gender shit, about life shit. Just Jade needs to be able to talk to people more. I wouldn't do any of the Jade and Dave shipping type stuff. The Jade and Dave sprite, I don't love that. I don't love that. They can talk, sure, but I wouldn't do the shipping with them. And yeah, I think June having a chance to talk a bit, and then having them be able to communicate with the Meteor crew in some way, I think would be good. And just I don't know, the specifics is not super important. I do kind of like the idea of them being able to send messages, not necessarily in real time, because they have to think about what they're gonna say. It's it's texting someone that lives in a different time zone than you. You've got to kind of be very deliberate about the way you communicate with them, and I think there's a certain charm to that, as far as them trying to
sort out like feeling shit through these asynchronous messages and whatnot. Yeah. Oh no. It's fine. But yeah, that's ship stuff is like lesser. It's a step down for the Meteor. There's less people there. It's less shit going on, but like it's fine.
Didn't Jade take the battlefield?
Yes, she did.
She has an entire planet of Carapacians to talk to.
She does.
Like
I think just
I don't like this weird. There's the Carapacians are like they're sentient enough to have an entire ideological revolution, but they can't talk to any of the I really don't like this. Well, they speak in sign language, so they're not intelligent thing that's like going on where
that's
like they
bad.
It's not because the same thing has happens with Roxy. Like Roxy grew up with the Carapacians. She's like, oh yeah, I love these little guys, but she like can't. They're not really people. They're sort of like pets, and I think that's something I change. Is like Jade's not alone. Jade can go talk to like. Jade can go talk to young WV if she wants. She can go talk to like many Carapacians who like.
I think.
Shut up! Real fast. She can go like the battlefield could have like a burgeoning society of like the Carapacians who were left there that she could go hang out with. Like I don't.
Yeah.
You can solve the loneliness issue pretty easily with all of the consorts, all of the Carapacians, and Nana. Dave Sprite can be her friend. Like yeah.
Yeah, and like I think that again because we're positioning Jade as this sort of like the core of the group's hope for getting out of the narrative, and like I think that having her like start to build all these relationships and like actually talk to people and connect to people, because this is the first time she's been able to do that in person with people because she's been so isolated. And then when I guess we're going to talk about this next time because we're going to talk about Grimbark. I would change very dramatically how she gets out of Grimbark, and I think that like what we're doing here in setting up her opening up to people more and more is setting up for how she gets out of Grimbark, and like continuing to make Jade this character that drives the hope of the narrative along, and the hope of escaping the narrative, actually the hope of the core character group, not the story. I think that's really important, and I think that I agree. Like there's all these fucking characters that she can talk to, and like the Carapacians are not they're sentient. They have thoughts and feelings and stuff. Like why the fuck don't we ever do anything with that?
What if and I think that will be helped by the Carapacians getting more characterization in the rewrite that I've already written.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. We'll I don't know.
The only other
things.
The only other thing I have to say is every time you ask us where the straight character is, we're going to remove another straight character.
Right.
So if you want any, stop asking.
Holding them hostage.
You think they're gay now? They're gonna be just super fucking gay if you ask.
There will be a scene at the end where they kind of look around and Dave goes like, hey, hold on. Is anyone here like normal?
Oh my.
David, you can't just ask people if they're normal.
Yeah, well, keep in mind that, I mean, like, people were asking about straight ships, and I pitched Jade Rosemary, so now you've got a lesbian polycule. So just think of what will happen if you keep asking.
Every time you ask for another one, the polycule increases in size in some way.
N+1, factor of N+1.
Yeah. But yeah, that's this episode. Next time, we're going to be talking about Act 6 again. Yeah. This time we'll talk about sort of Act 6, the trifurcated acts. So Act 6, Act 6, Act 1. Not excited about that nomenclature-wise, but I am excited about that events-wise, because this is where we start ramping up for I almost said recon. What the fuck? What? Okay, I lost the word.
Retcon.
I did the ADHD thing.
It's fine. Red
Yes,
John.
the
Red June. It doesn't work as well.
the Repticon.
Repticon.
The Decepticon.
I was about to say Decepticons.
Anyway, besides my horrible speaking, fucking, this is where shit gets good again after Act 5. So I'm excited to get into that. I'm glad we talked about shipping and ships a little bit. And once again, everyone have a great time. I don't really have anything else. I'm sorry this episode ended somewhat abruptly. This reminds me of Act 4 in that, like, this is the part where this is setting stuff up for later, but is also less narratively interesting than those acts.
I mean, we hit the 2-hour mark. But yeah.
Did we?
Yeah.
We're just about, yeah.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, I think we covered it in terms of, I don't know, we had to both ground it in context as well as give our myriad changes, because we really are in the bit where we're changing a lot.
Yep.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's all I got for now. I would also like to announce that I've started work on the actual rewrite itself, so you can expect some snippets over on my Twitter page. Just some preview stuff, if you're interested in that.
What's your Twitter handle, Jojo?
My Twitter is Big Funky J, because my old one got blasted.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I never got it back.
Sad face.
No, I got in an argument with Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, I remember
Online,
that. Yeah, you got into that big argument with Ben Shapiro, and
he called me his most formidable foe yet.
Yeah,
so.
and then he
then he
mass
took me down.
reported you. His followers
Yes.
took you down, unfortunately.
he knew I was correct on his own terms, so he had to report me. That is definitely 100% truth. How it happened.
As far as anyone listening knows, that is a correct
Yes.
recounting of events.
But yeah. Jordan Peterson Caliborn, I think, is the biggest brain thing we've said this whole episode, possibly this whole podcast.
I actually really like. I think you were out of the room for some of this, or most of it. Terezi tries to talk to Gamzee. Gamzee goes and talks to Rose. Actually, I think is my favorite change that we're making, because that solves so many of the problems that canon establishes, and also establishes a really good dynamic between Rose and Gamzee. So
Gender.
yeah, I like that a lot, and I think that it does lean very heavily into the Gamzee is someone that deserves way better than they got in canon and post-canon and a lot of fanon. Yeah, just in general.
Cool. Also, I have great news.
Yes.
Margaret Thatcher is still dead. See you guys next week. Time to record it.
Hey. Fuck. Alright. Are we stopping recording now?
Rewriting Homestuck is a podcast by Jojo McLovin, Janiah Riley, and Bucky Grant, hosted and produced by me, Jojo. Please follow the links in the description to each collaborator's Twitter and subscribe on YouTube. I'd like to thank my patrons for this month: Pyrate, Zipperozic, Kaleidoscope Mediator, Luna Skywalker Tucker, and Jojro. My Patreon can be found at patreon.com/funkmclovin. Have a great day.